right, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the release of Making Missouri a Manufacturing Powerhouse, a visionary report that we believe is going to drive the growth of manufacturing jobs in Missouri. And just as a reminder, these manufacturing jobs, they are life-changing, high-paying jobs. We know that the manufacturing sector employs 287,000 people in Missouri, and that's why this is so important to take a look at today. My name is Kara Corches. I'm the president and CEO of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And over the next half hour, you are going to learn about the strengths and the challenges that Missouri is facing in terms of growing our manufacturing economy. And we will provide recommendations that we can take to the General Assembly and communities across the state to make our sector stronger. And you are going to have an opportunity to ask questions, whether it's audibly or sending it in the chat box after our presentation is over. Many of you are familiar with myself and my team already. We are the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We are the largest statewide business lobby, and we work on policy that impacts and hopefully grows our state. We use our foundation, which is called the Missouri Chamber Foundation, spearheaded by the extraordinary Karen Bushman, to develop statewide policy and do polling and do research like this report that we really feel is going to move the needle. This report we are releasing today is no exception. Making Missouri a manufacturing powerhouse is going to be a strong catalyst for growing the manufacturing sector. We hope that newly elected Governor Kehoe, our Missouri General Assembly, and others are going to take some of these policy recommendations and run with them in 2025. We know that our heritage as a state is rich in making really cool things. And I'm excited to see how our state will take the lead in bringing back jobs and manufacturing to the United States. We know that we have a big momentum in the manufacturing sector, and we want to harness that. And that's why we are pleased to launch this report and pleased to be joined by the chairman of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Stet Shaughnessy. Stet is the president of Gray Manufacturing, which is a fourth-generation family-owned manufacturer in St. Joseph, Missouri, which makes world-class automotive lifts. Stet knows this industry firsthand, and that's why we are really proud to launch this report with a manufacturer himself. So I'm going to turn it over to Stet for his remarks. Thanks, Stet.
Thanks, Kara. I'll tell you, I appreciate everybody coming today. This report that we're going to talk about really gets me charged up. As chairman of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I'm excited to be working on this initiative as it hits very close to home, as Kara indicated. For 4 generations, Gray Manufacturing has provided livelihood for hundreds of Missouri workers, designing and manufacturing world-class pneumatic and hydraulic lifting products for our automotive and heavy-duty truck industries. When we talk about the economic impact of manufacturing jobs, we see it through the lens of groceries our families were able to buy, mortgages that were paid, cars that were bought, and kids that were put through school. Like the nearly 300,000 Missourians who make their living in manufacturing, the employees of Gray Manufacturing take immense pride in the products they build. Missouri has a unique opportunity to ride the wave of new manufacturing growth spurred by many things, including the desire to restore critical products like automotive supplies, pharmaceuticals, tech, to name just a few. And I would say reshoring entire manufacturing operations back to the United States and Missouri. But we're not alone. Other states are working hard to earn their spot at the front of the race for new manufacturing jobs. They also want to be a manufacturing powerhouse. We have to work collaboratively and efficiently. That's why I'm excited so many chambers of commerce and organizations working in this space were willing to partner with us on this project. To name a few: API Innovation Center, Advanced Manufacturing Innovation Center in St. Louis, the Center of Research, Technology, and Entrepreneurial Exchange, the Missouri Association of Manufacturers, Missouri Enterprise, the Regional Business Council, and St. Louis May. As you can see, we're heavily loaded on the eastern side of the state. I want to see more people, more manufacturers joining this effort in the central part of the state, the north part of the state, the south part of the state, and my side of the state, the northwest side of Missouri. In addition to these organizations, more than 300 manufacturers have provided input into the report we're releasing today. Our research was led by Ted Abernathy, Principal of Economic Leadership, LLC. The Missouri Chamber Foundation has worked with Ted for more than 10 years on research and strategy. Ted is a principal author of close to 100 reports on future trends, economic and workforce development, technology, and leadership, and he speaks on the economy almost every week. He formerly led the Research Triangle Association. He currently serves as an economic advisor to the Council of State Chambers and previously held a similar position to the Southern Governors Association. Ted is now going to share some of the data they have uncovered for us on manufacturing and then lead a discussion with you about how we can make Missouri even more powerful force for manufacturing. Ted, it's yours.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be with you today. I'll go ahead and just check and make sure that everybody can see the slides. Would somebody tell me yes?
Yes.
Great, perfect. So like everybody else, I have a history back in manufacturing. My grandparents all started out as farmers and eventually went to work in the textile mills in the South. And that allowed them to have their children go to school, and eventually came down to my brother and I, who were able to continue working and get our education. My father-in-law ran a GAF plant in Baltimore for 40 years. That's where I met my wife. And so manufacturing is a big part of what we have done in our family over the years also. When we think about manufacturing and what we need to do in Missouri, we start with trying to figure out how to make Missouri more competitive. And this goes all the way back to the first 2030 plan that's about a decade old now that the Chamber developed. How do you make the state more competitive for businesses? Falls into 5 categories. The first is business climate, and that's what you traditionally think of when you think of chambers of commerce at state level. They worry about taxes and regulatory climate and legal climate, and that's been traditional. It's been something that state chambers have been doing as long as I remember. But over the years, being competitive isn't just that. It is that, but it's not just that. It's about workforce. And so there's a 2030 workforce plan that looks at finding enough people with the right skills. And in manufacturing, getting enough employees with the right skills is still a major challenge. There's infrastructure issues. I've been doing this long enough that a 4-lane road and a site with water and sewer used to be enough. And now you got to have broadband, and you need housing for your employees, and you need childcare so that people can actually go to work. And the newest and hottest thing I'll talk about in a few minutes is you need power supply. You need to be a place where innovation happens because manufacturing doesn't sit still. There's research and development happening all the time. There's automation happening. Most of the industries in Missouri are advanced industries. They're using technology every day. And so you have to have the types of tax code and the type of support and the incentives that allow companies to continue to be on that innovation curve. And then since COVID came along, people have started talking more about risk. What's the crime rate? What's the fiscal stability of the state? What's the out migration or in migration of labor? And even in the last year, we're seeing more people talk about the geoeconomics, the global economics of trade and of supply chain. So what do we do with all of that information? We look and try to figure out where Missouri is. What's your current competitive position? What are the trends? What's the inertia? What are the industries that are important to you? And how are they changing over time? Because many of the manufacturing sectors are evolving to integrate technology and to meet changing consumer needs. We then went out and instead said we talked to 300 manufacturers and what do you need? What does it take to be successful in Missouri? And what's realistic? It's easy to write plans. It's harder to write strategic plans that are realistic. And finally, you create a set of action. What do we need to do to make Missouri more competitive? How to move it from where it is to where it needs to be? What role can the chamber play? And what are the specific actions that have impact, that are realistic, that are proven? So we look at best practices around the country that someone has the money to fund and are timely. So the Making Missouri a Manufacturing Powerhouse is a report that follows that strategic model. We're lucky. We're at a time when manufacturing is growing. Over the last 5 years, the amount of money being spent in America on construction of manufacturing facilities has jumped dramatically from around $70 billion a year to almost 4 times that. Uh, that's driven by the changes in geopolitics and geoeconomics, and it is part of the industrial policy that the U.S. has adopted, starting first with the first Trump administration and then through the Biden administration. The world changed over the last 4 years. The amount of goods that we import from China is down. The amount that we import from other Southeast Asian countries is up, as is the amount we import from India and Mexico. When we look at how long it takes to get product to market, it's easy to understand why the U.S. and Mexico and Western Europe are the places where manufacturers want to focus. So in the U.S., we're abandoning the long trade times and moving closer to the things that we can bring to market just in time. Now, at the top of that, you see India and Southeast Asia. They're both growth markets, but they still have a huge cost advantage. If you look at production cost, the U.S. and Canada and China are all near the same cost these days. Mexico is still a cheaper alternative, as is Southeast Asia. So you still see some labor arbitraging, but more and more of the manufacturing capacity is either reshoring or nearshoring. When we look at the sector overall, there are some tailwinds and there are some headwinds. The tailwinds are a real push to reshore or nearshore, especially critical industries. We're resilient. American consumers are continuing to buy, and those resilient consumers are continuing to support the GDP in our country. We're seeing automation productivity gains. Productivity has been relatively flat for almost 2 decades. And in the last few years, that started to jump. And so there's room for more productivity as we automate. And I think AI will probably add more to that. But the types of things that we've been talking about with sensors and just-in-time data and other things have been part of what's pushing manufacturing for its success. And then in the last few years, both administrations and probably, let's see here. I think we lost, give me a moment here. The federal legislation that is out there is creating a Can you see my screen at this point?
We cannot.
All right, let's see here. Bum, bum, bum. And can you see it now?
Yes.
My power blinked, so I apologize to all y'all. We're having a storm where I am. When you look at the cost, as I said, the parity's got there. What we've figured out in the last few years, COVID induced, many of you remember what it looked like in the spring of 2020, is that we needed to make more things in America. Whether that was chips so that Ford 150s could be rolled out, or whether it was toilet paper, we understood that there were things in America that we were too dependent on others for. The headwinds are the ones that we've been talking about for a while. The labor shortages are still there. Most manufacturers still struggle to find the people with the right skills. And part of that is that we don't expose our young people to manufacturing jobs early enough. There's still a headwind of geopolitical unrest. We don't know exactly what the trade deals will be in the future. The newest one is energy concerns. With data centers and AI and plug-in vehicles, do we have enough baseload power in a lot of parts of the country? Uh, Manufacturers suffer the same as the rest of us with inflation. And automation is great. It gets us more productivity, but you have to have capital to continue to do that. And that's hard for some places. As Kara said, we currently have a little over 270,000 manufacturing jobs in Missouri. That's about 1 in every 10 jobs in the state. That's about 8,000 different manufacturers. A lot of those are small and mid-sized companies. Some of them are huge, and you would know their names. But all across the state, there are manufacturers scattered everywhere. And when you look at wages, a dollar out of every 10 paid to the employees in Missouri comes from a manufacturing company. We hard times back in 2007 through 2009, all across America, manufacturers lost jobs, lost GDP. A lot of them went out of business. Since then, in Missouri, you have seen a steady growth. If you look at the red line there, big drop from 2007 to 2010, and then since then, steady growth all the way back up. The number of establishments has gone up even faster. That means there's a lot more small, mid-size manufacturers. And the overall manufacturing GDP started back up in 2011 and is now well above the level that it was when I think a lot of people were writing that manufacturing was dead in America. They missed that one completely. The good news in Missouri is we're growing faster in the state than the rest of the country, and we're projecting, we use Lightcast as our base data, we're projecting Missouri to continue to grow at a faster rate than the rest of the country. Missouri is a good state for manufacturing, and people understand that. Uh, the contribution to the GDP is about $50 billion, 14.5% of all the economy in the state is directly attributable to manufacturing. And there's room for improvement. When we look at the exports out of the state, we rank right in the middle, 27th currently in terms of states. There's a lot of room for improvement there, and you'll see recommendations that talk about improvements in the export. Right now, Missouri's leading export companies are localized. They're Canada to the north and Mexico to the south, and then a little bit scattered around the west of the world. So I think it's fair to believe that manufacturing exports out of Missouri have room to expand to other parts of the world, but also are protected generally by the trade agreements that we have with Canada and Mexico. That's their biggest partners, and those come up for renegotiation in about 2 years, and that's something that we need to watch closely. When you look at the post-pandemic job changes in Missouri, you can see that things like government and healthcare, retail trade, food services lost jobs. They're lower paying, and a lot of lower paying jobs are being automated away. But if you look at what's been growing, that's on the right side of the line there. Manufacturing averaging about $85,000 a job for total earnings is one of the growth areas. And if you put that down a little further, you find out that it's pretty broad based. You're seeing gains in transportation and chemicals and computers and food and machinery. So there's a big group of different types of manufacturers that are continuing to grow in the state. Uh, Concentration, transportation equipment manufacturing, cars, trucks, airplanes, is as a prize. If you're an economic developer all across America, that's the area you want to target the most. And Missouri's lucky enough to have that as their leading industry. But you're also strong in food manufacturing, fabricated metals, machinery, chemicals, plastics. pretty broad-based, and if you were designing an economy, you'd want it to be as broad-based as you could. We look every year. We started this for the Commerce Department at the federal level about 15 years ago when I used to run a think tank for Southern governors, when we were trying to figure out what you do to make states more competitive for manufacturing. And we created a manufacturing index. We still do it every year and share it. Looked at every state. If you look at your neighborhood, right now, Missouri is ranked 28th out of the 50 states for us. That's an improvement. You were 34th just a couple of years ago, and you've been moving up a little bit. But again, room for improvement, and that's what we're hoping this plan does. I know it's a hard to look at chart, but if you look at Missouri over on the right side, you're a top 10 state for business climate now, number 10. You're also a great state, 14th for innovation. The place where there's a lot of room for improvement is in the infrastructure area and the workforce area. And so you'll see the recommendations here are heavily weighted toward those. They're already part of what the Missouri Chamber lobbies for and is engaged in, because there's already a 2030 workforce plan and a 2030 infrastructure plan. This plan narrows it down to the manufacturing sector. People ask us, do those kind of rankings ever matter? And I just use this chart for illustration. The horizontal axis on the bottom is the rankings of all the states. The vertical axis is the growth in manufacturing jobs. And what you can see down here in the corner is the top 10 states in this ranking are 10 of the states with the fastest job growth. Up in the top, in the corner, are some of the worst rankings, and those are the places that are losing the most manufacturing jobs. We think this one works pretty well because we had manufacturing CEOs help us design the ranking system about 10 years ago. What do we recommend? What makes sense out of this? So we've got to expand the workforce pipeline. It's part of the Workforce 2030 plan, but it's really important to get there. There's a whole set of recommendations in the plan, but workforce education and training is a big piece of that. That includes apprenticeships. It also includes making incentives for childcare and boosting career awareness at the K-12 level of manufacturing careers. The incentives that states provide to companies, especially their own companies, need to be reviewed to make sure that you're not just incenting job counts, but you're also incenting innovation. If you have a company that the job numbers stay about the same, but there's no investment in new machinery and equipment and automation, over time, those job numbers are going to drop pretty dramatically. If you can help a company find ways to bring in that automation, then over time, the GDP out of those companies is going to go up and the wages are likely to go up. We also want to see investment in transportation, energy, and especially that energy supply and broadband. This is part of the Transportation 2030 plan, and the new piece of that is making sure that there's enough energy being developed in the state to serve the companies. Last year, for the first time, I've been doing this a little over 40 years, for the first time ever, utility infrastructure and the supply of power were deemed more important by site selectors than even labor force. And that's the first time that's ever happened. And that's because we've all of a sudden run into a time where there's not a clear path on how we're going to have enough power to support what we need in America. We still need to bring new manufacturers and bring them into the state. If you're going to try to grow the overall pie, you want to be a place where people want to come. So you've got to have sites and buildings, and you've got to have a work status environment where people want to go, where companies are comfortable coming. The export one I mentioned before, but there's a huge room for expansion of existing companies exporting that usually requires you to support small and mid-sized businesses. And Missouri is still a place where the legal climate needs to be worked on. Missouri 2030 is talks about that, and I think since the very beginning, more than 10 years ago, we've looked at that legal climate question. The statute of limitations issue is still important to the state. You've got to be more comparable to your surrounding states. There's got to be dispute resolution things, and so when you look at competitiveness, one of the changes in recent years has been the speed and certainty that companies want. And then, specifically to Missouri, the public safety issues are a drag, a headwind, if you will, on manufacturing. We've got to get enough law enforcement officers in the big cities and every county across the state, dealing with that through hotspots, through better training, through reducing recidivism. And then the consistency and accountability and transparency of our prosecutors and judges. So all of those things become part of this. There's a series of recommendations and a series of best practices. And I think the report both shows a lot of promise for the state, but also lays out an agenda for the Missouri Chamber to try to make the state more competitive overall. I'll stop there, and Kara, I think you're going to try to answer as many questions as you can from reporters.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Ted. Yes, now is a time for Q&A, so feel free if you just want to say your question or if you want to type it into the chat. I'm happy to moderate. Any questions, or Ted just covered it so well?
Yeah, you did. This is Emily Manley from Nexstar Media Group. And my question is, what should Missourians take away from this? What is something that maybe they should know or be worried about or should pay a little bit more attention to from a manufacturer's side of things? Because I truly believe that Missourians go day in and day out and don't even think about what's actually made in the state of Missouri. What should we take away from this?
That's a good question, Emily, and I think I'll lead, and then I know, Ted, you know the data better than anyone on this. But Emily, what I would say what the key takeaway should be is that Missouri has a bright future in manufacturing, and it's not just a bright future, we have a rich past. And we want to lean into our strengths as a state, and manufacturing is a strength, but we have work to do still. And we know that if we want to go from good to great, we need to enact some policies, whether it's enhancing our labor force participation through, let's say, the child care tax credit package, or ensuring that we have enough energy to attract new manufacturers and grow our existing ones, to make sure our grid is resilient, or if it's just making sure that we protect our place as a low cost state to do business. I think these are all factors that you may not always think of tie directly back to manufacturing, but they indeed do.
Emily, I'd just add that my takeaway is I get asked when I'm talking to groups, where are the jobs in the future going to be? And people tend to ask that have teenage kids at home. And we don't tend to talk about manufacturing much in K-12. We tend to talk about how to get kids to college, or we tend to talk about diversion of kids that aren't college ready. But we don't talk about building connectivity between jobs that pay really well. And if you look at a manufacturing job, they pay on par with college graduate jobs. And when we're talking to about awareness, I think one of the messages of the report is there's going to be plenty of really good jobs if we could just find the people who want to take advantage of them. And it's hard to know what manufacturing is today. People don't see behind the walls very much. It is not what it was when my grandparents were working in the textile mills. It is mostly high technology, and it is people that are good with their hands, but good with their brains. And I think the takeaway is we need to tell that message more.
Emily, if I could maybe join in on what Ted's saying from a boots on the ground perspective, absolutely. We have really worked on educating our local school system on the importance of high-skilled manufacturing jobs. Historically, I think when you visited the high school counselor, they were pushing you to four-year college and university, and we all know that everybody doesn't want to go to four-year school after high school. There is an alternate path, and that is high-skilled manufacturing jobs. I think Ted pointed out 85,000 is an average on what a manufacturing job is in the state of Missouri. A highly skilled welder with advanced manufacturing skills, machinists, they can easily make that and more depending on how busy their shop floors are. And over time can easily lead them into a six-figure salary, allowing them to buy a shiny new red F-150, as we joke about here at Gray Manufacturing out in our parking lot. I think that's very important. The other issue is, I think the stigma of a dirty and antiquated work environment is maybe the stigma that we have in manufacturing. Ted alluded to it. We have computers running our applications. Our team members here have to learn how to program computers, learn CNC programming. It's a very they have to be very smart, and we have a very clean operation. Robotics are well in play to help us be more efficient and to take on the issue of not enough in the workforce. So for me, that is a huge issue. The other thing I would say is, with all of the offshoring that's gone on in the last 20 to 30 years, I think we're now in a really unique opportunity. COVID helped us see this. We need to reshore supply chain back to the United States. We need to reshore complete vertical integration manufacturers back to the United States, because during COVID, the supply chain shut down many manufacturers because so many things were coming from across the sea, Pacific Rim in general. Gray Manufacturing traditionally has a very vertical supply chain. Vertically integrated here. We were able to survive that. We never lost our supply chain. It enabled us to go, during that period, go take market share. We've kept that market share with our high quality products. So it showed us the absolute importance of having those supply chains closer. And obviously, Missouri is centrally located. If we can fix some of the challenge areas that Ted talked about and reposition ourselves from a state standpoint, I see no reason why we can't bring more manufacturing and good paying jobs back to the state of Missouri. Just my perspective.
I love that. And I think Stet brought up a good point in terms of the global economy. We're not just competing with Kansas and with Iowa, we're also competing against Mexico and China and India. And so that's why it's so important that we're investing in manufacturing in Missouri, whether that's investing in automation and innovation, whether that's investing in attracting more labor force participation. We need to have an all of the above approach if we're going to compete on a global scale.
And by the way, this is Hannah Falcon with Gray Media. I was wondering, probably this is a question for Kara. What specific policies can Missouri implement? You mentioned the child care tax credits, but anything else that the state could implement, especially to encourage labor growth in this area?
Yeah, I think we need to look at, as a state, how do we enhance labor force participation? And one of the barriers to entry into the workforce is childcare. When parents don't have access to high quality, affordable, and reliable childcare, they're not going to go to work. And it may not make financial sense for them to go to work either. And so that is one barrier that has a tangible solution in Missouri in terms of the child care tax credit package that we've worked on in the last few legislative sessions and that we will be working to champion again this legislative session. Hannah, another kind of aspect to this report also, and to our workforce report, is how do we engage older workers in our workforce as well? How do we attract them back? How do we make sure that we also are engaging employers and second chance hiring as well. I think there are a number of recommendations from this report that can be implemented. I think on the infrastructure side of things, something that we will be working on this year at the Capitol is how do we increase our energy capacity in the state and reliability. We know that this is something that came up in our conversations with manufacturers. We talked with over 300 manufacturers in the state, and our energy reliability and capacity came up time and time again. So I believe, Hannah, that is an issue that we are going to see a lot of legislation on this legislative session. Anybody else?
I'll just echo what Kara said there again from our perspective. Females make up 50% of our population. Manufacturing historically has a lower number of females working for it. Childcare is certainly one of the issues there. Young moms can't sometimes work because they have to take care of their children. So if we can address childcare, that would be great. If we can go recruit more females to work, we want them. That would be great. A ready-made population to go after. So I think that is huge for us if we can somehow figure that out. Retirees, heavily looking at, we want our retirees to go off and enjoy life. That's what they've worked so hard for, but many times they want to continue working. We've got two 40-year retirees or two 40-year employees that will retire next month, and we're actively talking to them. Do you wish to come back and just work part-time? A lot of people want to stay active and busy, so there's that too. If we can go after retirees, keep our people that have worked here for 40 plus years continuing to work and share their knowledge base with our younger team members.
That's awesome. That's a great point. And Hannah, maybe one more point that I don't think there's a bill filed yet on, but I imagine this will be a topic of policy conversations in the upcoming years. As Ted addressed, innovation, and a lot of times incentives for businesses are tied directly to headcount. And we know if we don't have enough people, we need to utilize technology and automation to offset the losses in our labor force participation. And so I think that is something that some other states have done. Indiana, I know, has created a series of incentives for businesses that invest in automation. And I think not only is it helping, ensure that manufacturers can produce enough goods, it's also positioning Missouri to have smart manufacturing capacity. That is what we're seeing on a global scale. And again, in a global economy, that's what we need to do.
I think to tag on, Kara, investment in technology for our manufacturing shop floors is very important. I've seen a future study where the manufacturers that can figure out their needs now toward that end and put their capital together are going to be an advantage, because the companies that make the infrastructure, the robotics, the technology coming in, they're being overwhelmed with orders. So there'll be a competitive advantage for manufacturers that can figure out that technology that they need to run their shop floors.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. Any other questions?
I would just say, Kara, Gray's always open to the media. If they wish to come visit us, I'd be happy to have anybody that's online with us today give you a personal tour of a manufacturing shop floor that has a lot of technology and innovation on it. And you could see a Missouri manufacturer in action if you want to come take me up on that offer.
And I would highly recommend it. I've been, and it's so clean you could eat off the floor, and it's super impressive. So I think you would be blown away by seeing what's happening in St. Joe, Missouri. All right, well, thanks for being with us today. We wish you all a very Merry Christmas, and you know where to reach us at the Missouri Chamber. Feel free to reach out to Megan Davis with any other media inquiries. I just want to thank your participation, and Stet and Ted for hosting this webinar with us.
Thank you, Kara.
Thank you much.
Bye.